my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to episode 2 of Foster Mom Reads. It's been a while since the first one, and if you haven't checked that out, I will put that down in the description below. But I am finally back to read the next book on my list, Almost Home by Joan Bauer. This is a mid-grade contemporary published in 2012, which when we're talking books about foster care, the date matters because, like I mentioned in the last one, the majority of the laws that changed and really modified what foster care looks like was passed in 2008. So I think I'll be at least slightly lenient on this one, seeing as I do not believe the author is a foster parent, judging by the little author's note I read in the back. And considering how long it takes to write books, even mid-grade, the laws hadn't been in place for very long, so I'll give her some leeway. But the big reason that I wanted to pick this one is because this is all about a 12-year-old girl named Sugar May who ends up in the foster system after her mother has a serious mental breakdown. And the reason I wanted to go with that is because a lot of media likes to sensationalize birth parents who have their kids taken away at the foster system as gigantic abusers. In reality, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse is actually the minority of the reasons that kids end up in this system. It is much more likely that they end up because of neglect. Now, that's obviously still not great, but it's much more a case of the parent can't even take care of themselves, let alone a child, through reasons of severe poverty or drug addiction, etc. They are not usually able to take care of the child, but they don't necessarily have any malicious intent towards the child. This book also deals a lot of Sugar May's feelings about feeling up in the air and feeling lost, and she begins writing poetry and other, I believe, forms of word art about it. So this will follow both the real-life issues that she's struggling with and her poetic thoughts about them. The entire thing is about 264 pages. Well, not about, exactly. So I am going to be reading this in about 132 pages a day to read it in 2 days. So I will check in every 66 pages. So this should be a little bit of a quicker video compared to the last one, but I'm really excited to get into this one. I've had it for so long and I've wanted to read it. So let's jump in. Crazy hair. And a husband. Okay, I have read the first 67 pages, actually, of Almost Home. We are not to the foster care system quite yet, but things are looking very dire, and it will not be much longer. She's currently living in the shelter. I love her teacher. Mr. B is, like, the teacher I want to have if I ever go back to college. Because he's got, like, he's a 6th grade teacher, but he's got, like, weird professor vibes. Anyway, the dog is cute. Of course, you have to have the cute dog if you're going to put him on the cover. And yes, the parents are annoying me. Her father is a gambling addict who is never around and never helps pay for them. And the mother is one of those that refuses to admit that you can't rely on this dude for help and keeps trying to expect him to step in. So very, very dire, but she writes a lot of little letters and little poems that I love. It's a little bit stilted of a writing style, if I'm being honest. It's a little bit overly inspirational and not quite emphasizing the dire situation that she's in where they're in a shelter. That might have more to do with the fact that it's a mid-grade novel and you don't necessarily want to depress a 12-year-old who's going through something similar reading this. But in general, I will definitely be able to knock out the next 66 or so pages tonight very easily. So I will check in with you when I have done that. All right, I am halfway through page, actually like 133, 34, I don't know, of Almost Home, and we have finally gotten to the part with the foster care. And I was a little bit nervous at first, because at first she went to a group home, and I was like, oh god, is this going to be one of those, look at how absolutely horrible and run down and filled with rats the group home is. Not that they're great. The system, if the kids have to be in the system, you want them to be in a foster home, not a group home. But thankfully she wasn't in there for long, and then she moved to an actual foster home, and it's a good home. Thankfully, her mother is still undergoing psych evaluation, so she's staying with this couple, and they did it right. They introduced her to her room, told a little bit about themselves, and then backed off and let her have her own thing. And she's not sleeping well through the night, but that's to be expected. And it's one of those things where I don't think people understand when writing about foster care in the media is it sucks enough without making the foster parents appear abusive. Like, the very act of being in this system is plenty of fodder for any piece of drama you would want to write. You don't also have to make the foster parents abusive. And I appreciate that, even though the foster parents are doing the right thing and are like have a nice house and are treating her well, she still misses her mom. She still misses her life. She's still sad and upset and not sleeping through the night. Again, like how it actually happens. That's the one thing that I think a lot of people don't get when I talk to them, and they're always like, oh, well, I don't think I could give them back. The majority of kids, especially in situations like Sugar May's, where the parents weren't necessarily abusive, but couldn't keep track of everything to take care of the child and were neglectful, the kids want to go back. Like the two that we have reunified with their families excitedly talked about going back. Oh, when I live with my dad, when I live with grandma, when I go back, when I live here, all the time. This all tracks. Like the part I've seen about the foster care so far, it's fairly an accurate portrayal what I've seen. Now, obviously, it hasn't been that many pages. We still got the other half of the book, but I really appreciate that. And also, the foster parents give their first names, and that is a cultural thing. We had one foster daughter that all called us Margaret and Alex the entire time, and the other one that called us Mom and Dad. We did not ask her to. We did not force her to. However, we asked some friends just to make sure, and we think it's a thing of the Black community where Black kids do not call the adults taking care of them by their first names. Anyone want to comment on that from that community, please double check. But in general, I'm really liking the representation so far. This is a lot nicer than the last book where it was like every foster parent was evil except for the one. And it honestly, from what I can see, reached fairly true to what's today. And in all honesty, part of the reason that she might have been in the group home is because of her age. 12 is a really hard age to place because most foster parents that get started young will have adopted and already have a full house with no room for more foster kids by the time they're old enough to parent 12-year-olds. Because, I'm 27. I don't have the ability to parent a teenager right now. I'm not there. I would love to one day, but I like this so far. Still a little bit stilted in the writing style, a little bit too overly inspirationally for my tastes, but we are getting to the part where her poetry is getting much more like blatantly realistic of, I feel like I'm falling apart and I'm gonna turn to stone, and what happens if my mom happens to me? So it's, to my knowledge, as this is a foster mom read series, seems very accurate, and I am very happy so far with the portrayal of the foster parents in it. But that is enough talking for today and enough reading this book for today. I will do the other half tomorrow, and I will be very happy to have read a book in 2 days. But until then, I will check in with you later. All right, it is day 2 of the 2-day reading vlog. We have the next chunk of pages to do, and I'm really intrigued because everything that's mentioned in the synopsis has already happened, and we still got like half the book left. So I'm interested to see where it goes from here. I'm not going to tell you like if she goes back home or the ending or what have you, but I'm excited to see where we go. So I will check in with you after I have read. All right, so I am up to page 200, final stretch. Sugar May is still in foster care, and I really appreciated the complexity of her feelings because, well, yes, this is objectively a nicer, more comfortable, and healthier physical place for her. It's still not with the people she necessarily wants to be with, but also sometimes she wants to stay there, but then she feels bad because she should want to be with her mom, but things with her mom weren't good, and so it's very complex emotions, and I appreciated that. The only thing so far that the foster parents have done that I would be like, no, was when they were talking about other foster kids they've had. They only ever have one at a time, which is similar to my husband and I. We're only ever going to have one placement at a time, meaning foster kids from the same family, as opposed to kids from different families, because we tried that. Didn't go very well. but she's like talked about how, oh well, uh there's other girls have come in this house that have it harder than you, and like that's not the thing you say. Every kid in the foster care system has multiple levels of trauma, and you don't need to nitpick all the time. But I also liked how everyone else around them acts, because when you are a foster parent, other people in your life realize it, they know it, and while I will never say to someone that I am introducing this child to, this is my foster child, you're supposed to say, this is so and so, they're staying with us for a while. They know we're foster parents. The people are going to put two and two together, family, neighbors, the people at the places, regulars at, business wise. Like when we do have another kid come in, the neighbors are going to be like, oh, there's a new kid at Margaret and Alex's house, but I know who they are. Like, but you don't say it. And of course, there are some kids here that are like, I know why you're there. And like, there's going to be stupid kids that say that kind of thing. Heck, there's probably kids in our neighborhood that would say that to one of our kids. Haven't had that happen yet, thankfully. And most of the time, adults, when we do the whole, this is so-and-so, they're staying with us, they're chill. Oh, cool, nice to meet you. Like, for the most part, it hasn't been an issue. No one's like questioned it or wondered what that means that they're staying with us. Most people just understand. But again, this is holding fairly true, albeit still that mid-grade, like in a mid-grade book is trying way too hard to be inspirational and like give off all like the quotes to you. I'm still getting a lot of that in this, but again, it's one of those, if this is meant to be read by someone, a kid in a similar situation, then I would hope that they get something from it. And also, randomly, the foster parents talking about how one of their previous foster daughters was addicted to drugs at age 13 and overdosed. Kind of came out of nowhere. But beyond that, I've got about, 64 more pages left, and then I will be 100% done, and I will check in with you with my final thoughts. And I am done with Almost Home by Joan Bauer. It was a really sweet ending, not too perfect, not too everything put in its place. There was actually a bit of drama with the biological parents, the birth parents, and the foster parents. And we've never had that, at least not yet. Most of the time, we had perfectly fine experiences. Although I did like the part about how when her parents did come to visit, there had to be someone else there. Because basically in the system, if you're a parent that's had a child taken away, every visit needs to be supervised by someone, either someone from DHS or a family member that has been given certification, like background checks and stuff to do it. So I liked that little tidbit that the foster parents had to be there. And in all honesty, I don't know that I would ever want to supervise those visits, but I also liked how the foster parents talked about her parents, because it's one of the things they tell you in the class is that you never bad talk the parents to the kid, ever, regardless of what they've done. And some of the times those things can get really bad, but if you bad talk or down talk the parents to the child, you're just creating divisions between yourself and the child. And the foster mom, Lexi, even mentioned like the whole point of the system is to reunite kids when it's the right time, and the dad was mad. And I haven't had that yet, but I worry about that all the time. I worry about that struggle. So fingers crossed I don't have to deal with that a lot. But the ending was properly nice. And I really appreciated it. Admittedly, it almost does feel, the writing style feels a little bit too young for a 7th grader. But a lot of these mid-grade novels tend to really be for younger kids, and they're actually written for these kind of books. Again, I got this from a clean out in an elementary school library. So usually these are like your 4th, 5th, 6th grade type books, not necessarily your older middle school. But I really enjoyed it. It was a much more accurate take on foster care, in the sense that the child is still going to struggle regardless of what foster care is like. You don't need to make foster care horrible to show the struggles of the child. The fact they're in the system is struggle enough. You can mine that for plenty of drama without also trying to perpetuate the idea of fostering as this horrible, scary place that kids should see as the worst thing that can happen to them, which a lot of kids do, hence why a lot of kids don't talk about the abuse they're suffering, because they see foster care and entering into foster care as the worst thing ever. But this one was a much more nuanced take, and it showed foster parenting as a safe haven while you're going through a bunch of stuff. So I really appreciated that. And I think I need to like maybe look up more mid-grade. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe it's like the teen adult stuff that shows it as so negative. Regardless, I really appreciated this. I am going to be looking into a few more books. I don't have that many on my list, unfortunately, so it's probably, again, going to be a while before episode 3, but I will get to it at some point eventually. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. If you have any recommendations for books that I could read for this series, please let me know. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.